Hey guys, it's New Year's Eve, like 1:30 a.m. Um, let's take a look at where Bitcoin's at and see if we can figure out where it's going to go for the new year. 2018 is going to be an exciting year. Big things are coming. So if you saw in my last video, I did a bunch of fib retracements with a magic fib level of 0.382 or 38.2%. We're going to use that and just continue off of it and see what's happening right now down to a smaller time frame. But first, in the overall time frame, actually, let's go to the daily. Um, this huge curve going on, and then there's a big drop. Draw a trend line, and let's see if we can get it to bullish trend line, right? Uptrending, bullish. Obviously, it went far from the trend line, and now it's just a correction. It does that all the time. That's what I use the fib retracements for, is to measure where it will go after it drops. So there's an all-time high. Make that color yellow, right around the 20,000 mark. I think it's actually like 19.9 or something like that, but close enough estimation. Again, all of this is speculation, right? Nothing is ever certain. But we can see patterns, we can measure patterns, and then we can estimate probability of what might happen. There might be a higher probability of something happening versus a lower probability of something not happening. And so we go with that, but nothing is certain. All right. So that being said, let's go ahead and start off with fib retracement. So you retrace basically from the all-time high down to its previous drop or its previous low, right? And here is one of those moments, because when it was like about 8 grand, it dropped down to about 5,500. Quite a significant drop. That's almost 70% of a drop. So we measure from there up to the all-time high. And here's that magic level that we're looking for, that Bitcoin tends to repeat itself, 0.382. So one thing to note here, it came, when it progressed up, right, this could have been the all-time high right here, around a little over 17,000. Then it came back down, and it could have been this could have been the correction that we normally look for, but that wasn't the case, because it almost immediately went back up again. A little bit too crazy. I think, and I speculate, that this area, this extra area here that's going up, is when pretty much everyone and their grandma and their postal office person, or their mailman, start talking about it, right? And that's that extra hype that pushed it all the way up to 20 grand. So what happens? The market never really got its correction in place, right? Just to entertain you, let's assume that that's an all-time high, okay? And then it retraced down. Here, it's more clear. It retraced down to right about here. That's only at the 0.618 fib level at best, okay? That's not enough of a correction to be an actual correction so that it can further progress and make a new all-time high, right? Which in this case, you can say that it kind of just did. That means it's way overdue at this point to actually have a real correction. So we're going to measure from this all-time high, and now we're going to measure how far it actually drops. So we can see that there's bearish bearish volume, bearish momentum happening here. I'm going to draw a trend line right around there. Okay, so this trend is following this trend. It's coming, it's you know, fluctuating, still following this trend line, right? But as it came down here, this actually matched and hit the 0.382 fib level. Okay, so it satisfied the correction that we needed before it can actually progress further and make all-time highs. Check. More so than that, if you look right around here, these two areas, put a blue line there, resistance, right? Previous resistance equals new or current support. Problem is, every time it goes past the resistance, should come back down and test resistance, forming the support. It never did that here. It never did that at all, actually, until finally, right around here, where it satisfies that testing of previous resistance, but also the 0.382 level. Okay, so this drop here absolutely satisfied it. Now, it did a double bottom right here. You guys don't know what double bottoms are. Double bottoms are basically more confirmation adding to the confluence that that this really is support, that it is intact, that the price does not want to get lower than that. It's being rejected, meaning buyers deem that any price point below this, which is about 12,000, is cheap and it's worth buying. So it will immediately come back up. More so than that, this is the trend line, bearish trend line, downtrend. It actually broke it here. I think this was on the 25th, a few days ago. You can see these massive green bars, or blue. Having this blue. Zoom into the 1 hour. Here we are. Big green volume up, right? Broke this trend line. Technically, at this point right here, I would say that that's momentum has reversed, meaning it's on its way, it's on track to going back to being normal, probably even back to 20 grand and beyond. But when it got up to about mid 16,000, we started to see a little downward trending. And at first, realistically, this little downward area, that was just a slight correction. Not a big problem, because it was going to come back up. We'll go in further. It was going to come back up, but see this big red candlestick right here? This was when South Korea announced that they were going to regulate the cryptocurrency exchanges and impose new policies or laws and what have you. So that was the start of another downtrending happening again. And you can see kind of like fluctuation here, stagnancy, and it actually formed another downtrend right there. Okay, I'm gonna color this one dark purple because that's bearish. The light purple, sorry, this is bullish. Dark purple is bullish. The light purple is bearish. So you can see here that it's kind of bouncing in between these two purple lines, right? 1, 2. That's a bearish channel. Basically, yes. Basically, it's going to remain with this channel, and usually when it's in a channel, it's going to continue in that channel until it hits something that causes it to reverse or to end the channel, meaning it will break out of the channel somehow, some way. So the blue line I drew from previous resistance, right, formed a double bottom here, broke out of this trend line, and then a new bearish channel new downward trend line came, forming a bearish channel. Then it came down here recently. I think it was actually today, earlier this morning, dropped down to touch this support level again. And now you can see it's still intact, right? Because it came down, came back up almost right away. Same thing here. Came down, came back up, down, come back up. That means the support level is still holding. It's intact. Now, if it breaks that, we can expect it to go down further, right? But it's not. It's holding, and actually creates this sort of triple bottom that we're seeing here. 1, 2, 3. Adding more to the confluence that this price point of about 12,000 is a solid floor. Anything under this is dirt cheap as far as the market is right now, market condition right now. So we'll go in a little bit. Well, actually, before we go in a little bit deeper, I'm gonna come back here a little bit to show you a little something. So the reason why I drew this blue line here and said that it had to come back and touch this blue line at least, like I mentioned earlier, is because it needed to retest previous resistance, right? So there's a gap. Actually, you can argue that there's a gap right here, never quite touched it until here. That information is provided by my buddy Andrew Ho. There is actually more gaps further below, as you can see here, resistance, right? And then when it dropped, it never came back to really touch it, and it never quite did ever at all. That's around like the lower mid 8,000 price point. You can say that if it breaks this support here, the blue line, or zone 1 or primary support, whatever you want to call it, and it continues down, if it follows this bearish channel, I would anticipate that it will come down to the mid 8,000s at least to touch this secondary support or zone 2 support. Quite possible. That would take a lot of heat on Bitcoin or even the cryptocurrency market to have that many sellers and that many uncertain buyers to bring it down that far. Pretty hard to do that. But just for fun, I'll show you yet one more. Right about here. Resistance. When it went up, came down, never quite touched it, right? Came down here, never quite touched it. Came down here, never quite touched it. Never ever did. I would say that this is the third support level that it can come down to. And in fact, my personal opinion, again speculation, is that if and when Bitcoin truly does burst, because it is in the bubble, no matter what anyone says, it is in the bubble, but we're riding the wave, and we're gonna try to profit off this bubble, right? When it does, if and when it truly does burst, I believe that it will come down to this area, just under 5 grand, to retest that resistance, previous resistance right there. Just like we saw here, because there was a gap right here. It never came back down to touch it, right? And finally, it did. Took quite a lot of bad news and whatnot, and sellers to bring it to that level, but I believe it's possible here, mid 8,000s, and here, just under 5,000. Just some food for thought. But as we all know, my favorite fib level right here, 0.382. Every time it goes from an all-time high down to the 0.382 fib level, and it progresses upwards, it should break the all-time high and create a new all-time high. It could be like 22 grand. It could be, we follow this is another fib level. Could be 24 grand. right? We don't know how far it'll go, but it should come back to at least 20,000 area and break it. And we can see the first trend line I drew, the bullish trend line. Technically, Bitcoin is still uptrending. So this huge correction here is not out of the ordinary. It's not even anything worth panicking at all. I think at this point right now, you see how that blue line support and this bullish purple line uptrend, if it falls below this significantly and it continues with this bearish channel, I would then start worrying and considering selling and rebuying when it comes down to mid to low 8,000s. But as of right now, it doesn't seem to be the case because this support level is holding very firmly, triple bottom. All right, now we go back deeper in to see what's happening today or the past day or so. So we can see if this is support and it's holding, right, we can call this absolute bottom or the floor. And after it touched the floor, it's starting to make higher lows, higher low points, and higher highs, right? So we can say that on a smaller scale, with that color, it's uptrending. Is it really uptrending? We're not sure. Don't know. We'll know if this holds. Now, if it falls below this, technically you can even do it like that, and you could say, oh, look, it kind of broke down past it, right? But the volume right now, this is all volume, by the way. You can see like massive volume, massive sell volumes right here. Massive sell followed by a ton of buys. Very low volume right now, so it's hard to say that if it's really trending back down or not. But overall, this whole thing, since it hit major support here, it's trending upward, right? It's not a clear break right here. I wouldn't call that a break. So we'll see. If it continues following this trend line upward, closer and closer to this end right here, and this downtrend within the bearish channel, eventually, when it gets to this point here, it's either going to break out of the bearish channel and go up, or it's going to break below this uptrend and continue in the bearish channel. And if it breaks down, continues in the bearish channel, we can expect it to meet this purple line or this blue line, test it, and then at that point, we'll see if it goes back up, or if it will actually break down below it finally, and then down to 8,000 area. So we'll see what happens. Another thing to note, I'll come back out to the 1 hour time frame. Another thing to note is since this original downtrend here was broken right here, and a new one was formed there, we'll create that. This is some color bearish. So this is the new downtrend, right? The range of the downtrend. To see a true reversal, it has to come out past this downtrend. It will retest at some point further down. We don't know when, where. But to see a true reversal, so it resumes back toward 20 grand again, it has to break this trend line. But first, it needs to break this bearish channel. So it's got quite some barriers to overcome first before we actually see a true reversal, or confirmation, I should say, confirmation of reverse, bearish reversal. So this is the major uptrend, the dark purple. This is the major downtrend, right? Eventually, the two will meet. If it jumps between these two, if it breaks, even if it breaks out this bearish channel, but it will jump between and touch these two. Eventually, it'll get to a point where the market needs to make a decision: is it going up or is it going down? It can get dragged out that far, and that's what we call consolidation, right? Technically, we are sort of in consolidation right now, and I hate consolidations because buying or selling for the long term, it's not in the best position to do so because you can't tell where it's going to go. But when it gets here, and as you can see down below, it says 2018 January 6th. That's funny because that's actually what my buddy Andrew said, be the 6th or the 7th, where if Bitcoin does take off, it will take off at that point. But also, if Bitcoin decides that it does not want to take off and it decides it wants to sink, it will sink at that point. So we'll see what happens. Trade carefully. You know, everything is measured on probability. Nothing is certain. It's all speculation, right? But one last thing, just for fun and giggles. I'm going to show you the consolidation box right here. Right. Spin consolidation. It's just going to bounce around, but more specifically, it's going to follow this triangle right here. You follow my cursor. It's going to come to this point. You know, either shoot up or sink down. So that's where we're at. Let's see where we're at. Down to the 5 minutes. Currently, it's at 12,500, right? And this floor here held, and the uptrending is still somewhat holding. You can see the candle wicks here. That's rejection, rejection, rejection. Rejection meaning it doesn't want to go past it. So we don't see a lot of rejections on top. We see the rejections on the bottom. That tells me that it's uptrending. So we'll see. I mean, this is by no means accurate at all, but tomorrow, about 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon sometime, it's gonna come to a point where is it going to stay in the bearish channel or is it going to break out? And that's the first hurdle, right? So maybe tomorrow, it could even be the day after, I don't know, or it could even be tomorrow morning, or even in a few hours. We don't know. Bitcoin is so crazy. Sometimes when I estimate that something's going to happen in a couple weeks, it happens like the next day. So we'll see what happens. But once it passes this hurdle and if it goes up, the next hurdle would be this major downtrend line here. And it could take up until a week later or longer. So that's where we're at. I guess that's good enough for now.